Brenda, that is how it is. Nakuru is gearing to be a city in December. Brenda.
Of course, Elphas, that also sounds as good news to residents of Nakuru County because it means development and more economic income. Now, away from Nakuru County, and I'd like us to go back to our top story this morning, and that is the weather alert that was issued by the Kenya Meteorological Department. So far, we've seen several counties flooded, beginning with Mombasa counties we had earlier seen when we were talking to a reporter, Francis Mtelaki. It is a discussion I want us to have with Ayub Ishaka, Assistant Director at the Kenya Meteorological Department, who's now joining us live here on KTN News Center. Mr. Ishaka, thank you so much for speaking to us. And so far, we have seen counties that should put on high alert begin to, receive heavy rainfall. For how long will this happen?
You remember we had issued an alert from Monday and Tuesday, and it was running up to tomorrow. And from now where I sit, I can see a lot of, from the satellite pictures, I can see a lot of rains around the coastal strip. And we expect this to continue up to Friday, but starts going down by Sunday.
And so let's talk about Mombasa County, Tana River, to experience a bit of some low rainfall.
Yes, in the alert, we actually specifically mentioned that the coastal strip was going to experience heavy rains in the range of 25 to 40 millimeters in the 24 hours. And so far, we've started getting signs of those areas getting rains. In fact, from our systems, we see that so far, Mombasa has reported about 20 millimeters from this morning to now. And we expect it to continue. And we have also expect a place like Tana River and the Kilifi and the Kwale to start experiencing those kind of rains.
So just apart from Tana River, Lamu, Mombasa and Kilifi counties, what is the situation going to be like in counties like Nairobi, Nakuru, Kisumu, and even regions in Rift Valley?
Yeah, as realized, we just started getting the rains, and now most of the counties have received significant amounts of rain. Only that we decided to give an alert because we were seeing heavy rains around the coastal strip. But by Monday, the rest of the country should be able to get rains, including even the northeastern parts of the country.
When you talk about the rest of the other parts of the country should be able to receive rains, including the eastern and the northeastern, let's talk about areas, the semi-arid and arid areas that usually receive less rainfall. What is the rainfall situation going to be like?
Well, from our forecast we gave last in September, we expected to have above normal rainfalls in most parts of the country, apart from the southeastern lowlands, basically around Makueni, Taita Taveta, which was going to get average to slightly above average. But northeastern areas were to get above normal rainfalls. And this does not mean that we'll get everywhere flooding, because their normal is basically not as much as you can say, or rather you can want to compare it with Nairobi or other parts of Western Kenya. So when you talk about above normal, is their normal. And in this case, we are talking about 200 millimeters in this season, and they will get slightly more than 200 millimeters in the range of about to 300 millimeters.
Mr. Shaka, as much as you're talking about this is like a normal rainfall during this short rain season, but earlier on we were talking with our reporter in Mombasa, Francis Mtelaki, and the kind of pictures that we're showing our viewers, it is that it's already flooded. It is short rains. Are we experiencing flooding?
Yeah, as we mentioned in our alert, we said that the rains were going to be heavy, and ordinarily when you have heavy rains, sometimes the drainage systems are overwhelmed, and therefore most of the water runs over to the other areas which are not necessarily the drainage patterns, or rather the drainage areas. So even if you have a small, a little shower, and the drainage patterns are not good, then you expect to have some flooding around the roads and so on and so forth. So really, we were expecting heavy rains, and therefore we expected those kind of things to happen.
So now the short rains are here with us. We're seeing some flooding in some counties. It's begun towards the end of October. So when are we expecting the short rains to end?
Ordinarily, short rains start in October and end in December, and in some parts like Mombasa, they end in January. So for the areas around the coastal strip, the rains will end around January, mid-January. But the rest of the country, or rather the other parts of the country, that is Western Kenya, Nairobi, Northeastern, they'll end slightly earlier. By December, mid-December, most of the areas will have received all the rains they expect, apart from central parts of Kenya, which might go on up to end of December. But the northern parts of the country will end slightly earlier, by first week of December.
So after this, do you expect a long dry spell? Because you're seeing some parts of the country, like the coastal region, will experience rain until January. So after January, do you expect a dry spell, and for how long?
If you go by climatological kind of situation, you realize that January and February is normally they are dry months, and that's what we expect before we start getting the long rains in March. So really, there will be a short dry spell for many parts or many counties as normal.
When you talk about short, Mr. Shaka, how short is the short? Is it short of 1 month, 2 months, 3 months?
I mentioned that the rains are going to end by December in most parts of the country, and the coastal areas will end by January. So for those areas whose rains will end by December, they'll have slightly longer dry spell, because the long rains will be in March, which means therefore we'll have January, February, and a bit of March. So 2 to 3 months of kind of dry spell for most parts of the country.
All right, and it looks like some areas, I'm still, giving an example of Mombasa County, because that is so far what we have, and we have those pictures. And it looks like county government look like they're not prepared for this short rainfall that was going to come with a bit of some flooding, because in Mombasa it's flooded, the drainage system is not working. Did you share some of this information with the county governments before issuing an alert to Kenyans?
Yeah, whenever we issue an alert, we share it with all relevant stakeholders. And on the ground, we have our county directors of meteorological services